cripple economies, destroy livelihoods and even take lives. And as sea levels rise and extreme weather events become more frequent, we need to adapt to protect ourselves from the effects of climate change. We need to keep working together on this, helping each other, learning from each other, and maintaining our dialogue. In December, 2 years ago, in December 2021, Malaysia was hit by major floods. The Netherlands was glad to help and deployed a team of experts to Malaysia. The Dutch Disaster Risk Reduction and Search Support Program aims to prevent and reduce the impact of water and climate-related disasters worldwide. Sharing knowledge, technical expertise and technology is an essential part of setting up international frameworks for climate resilience and keeping very practically our feet dry, almost literally our feet dry in the future. And believe me, we know from experience what this takes. Yes, you're right. The Netherlands is a low-lying delta. For centuries, we have been largely successful in managing floods with dikes, dams, and innovative techniques. A devastating flood in 1953 led to the iconic Delta Works project, which has kept the southwest of our country safe ever since. Another project that captured the world's imagination is the Maaslandkering. This is a storm surge barrier that protects one of the Netherlands' most densely populated areas against flooding, including the proud city and port of Rotterdam. All this engineering innovation has attracted the attention of countless water experts and leaders from abroad. So it's no coincidence that the world looks to the Netherlands when it comes to climate adaptation through water management. Conversely, we are always keen to learn from others. We admire how Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur are improving their flood resilience. The smart tunnel is a key feature of these efforts. To us in the Netherlands, a tunnel, can you imagine? A tunnel that channels floodwaters past the city centre, I think, is a real feat of engineering. We don't have that, and we can learn from you. But as we all know, building more steel and concrete infrastructure may not be enough in the long term. We are learning that green infrastructure and nature-based solutions are often more resilient, are often more flexible, and more reversible than traditional methods. It's taken us many years to change our approach, giving room to water and building with nature, as we say. So I'm pleased to learn that Malaysia is also looking at preventive measures, incorporating nature-based approaches to climate adaptation and flood management. Protecting the environment and ecosystems, I think, is fundamental to climate resilient cities. So, ladies and gentlemen, it would be an understatement to say that there is a lot that we can learn from each other. In March this year, as you already mentioned, Minister, the world came together in New York for the first major UN water conference in almost 50 years. The conference, co-hosted by, indeed, the Netherlands and Tajikistan, the Netherlands, a low-lying delta country, Tajikistan famous for its glaciers. This conference resulted in the Water Action Agenda, aimed at getting the world on track to meet Sustainable Development Goal number 6. So far, more than 800 voluntary commitments have been generated by various countries. And now it's important to capitalize on the momentum of the UN Water Conference and to ensure that those commitments are not just commitments, but that those commitments are met. Minister Nasmi, Minister, I should say, Nick Nasmi, I appreciate that in your statement in New York you mentioned that our two countries have been holding this annual water dialogue since 2018. We are pleased to be involved in your efforts to achieve your own water action agenda goals. And you can count on us for our continued commitment. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this water dialogue, I believe, is a key platform for sharing ideas and best practices, but particularly is a key platform to learn from each other. Some prominent Dutch experts have already presented several highlights from the Netherlands. And I am proud of the water partnerships between Malaysian and Dutch knowledge institutions, consultancy firms and water companies. And I'm sure that this sixth Malaysia-Netherlands water dialogue will only add to what has already been achieved. So I wish you all a productive and inspiring dialogue, of which we both hope to be part for the next, let's say, 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to spark more conversation on our theme today on water and climate change, we will proceed with the high-level dialogue session, which will be moderated by Dr. Hazri Adnan, Adjunct Professor from International Institute of Public Policy and Management, University Malaya. Dr. Hazri Adnan is an experienced professional working for sustainable development and human security. He is a trustee of the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF Malaysia, and an independent advisor for Petronas Chemicals Group Berhad. Dr. Hazri has led numerous initiatives to promote environmental sustainability and poverty reduction. He was also a distinguished fellow at the Institute of Strategic and International Study, ISIS Malaysia, where he worked to promote technology and innovation for social development in the context of non-traditional security. Hazri is also a prolific author, and his latest book, The Sustainability Shift, Refashioning Malaysia's Future, is a groundbreaking work that explores innovative solutions to Malaysia's most pressing sustainability challenges. Please welcome Dr. Hazri Adnan to join Minister and Prime Minister on the stage. As such, I will pass the event to the moderator. Please welcome Hazri Adnan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Greetings of peace, greetings of solidarity, Honorable Mark Rutte, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Netherlands, Honorable Minister Nazmini Ahmad, Minister of NREC. Greetings of peace, greetings of solidarity. It's a pleasure being with the distinguished panelists today, working on a very important topic on water and climate change, and this is a high-level kind of discussion. Just to move straight into the discussion, Honorable Prime Minister, around July this year, the Secretary General of United Nations, Antonio Guterres, made a rather uncommon statement declaring that the age of climate change or global warming is over, but instead he declared that we have entered the age of global boiling instead. And that is a very strong statement coming from the head of United Nations. And I wonder, as a country that is perhaps most prepared when it comes to adapting the impact of climate change, the Netherlands, I guess your whole history was defined by adapting to floods and the impact of water. I wonder whether this raises a concern among the society, among the political elites in the Netherlands, that we are entering a new era.
Yes. And let me say somewhat more. Now, yes, absolutely, answer is yes. We are very worried, because we know that with the rising sea levels, it will impact our country. You have to imagine that from the 18 million people living in the Netherlands, about 7 to 8 million live below sea level. As we like to say, God created Earth, the Netherlands created the Dutch created the Netherlands. For example, Schiphol Airport is 4 meters below sea level. Please continue traveling to Schiphol, it is safe. But it is 4 meters below sea level. And we cannot continue as we have been doing, building dikes and all these other infrastructures, because people don't accept it any longer. They don't want to live beyond these huge concrete structures. And that is why we are working on all these innovative solutions. We call this in a somewhat clumsy English way, building with nature, for lack of a better name, which has to do with the fact that you try to somehow change streams and rivers in the sea, creating natural barriers, creating new ecological hotspots as a sort of byproduct. And this is crucial, next to, of course, climate mitigation. We are spending huge amounts of money on climate mitigation, and we want to keep our big industries in the Netherlands, like steel mills and our refineries and our chemical cluster. because we do not want the CO2 leakage of them leaving and going to pollute somewhere else, but we want them to become clean in our country. Our contribution, next to other stuff, in fighting climate mitigation, or working on climate mitigation, fighting climate change. But climate adaptation has to be part of this, including, I have to add, because we are close to the COP28 in Dubai, making sure that we make a success out of COP28. And I heard too many people saying, oh, it will be difficult. Yes, it's always difficult. But we cannot afford that we add somewhat to the global CO2 emissions by flying all to Dubai and then not to be successful there. And particularly on the $100 billion pledge and on loss and damage, we have to get to conclusions and think on at least $100 billion pledge that is possible. The Netherlands has increased its contribution from 1.3 to 1.8 billion. So on all these issues, climate mitigation, adaptation, and trying to play our role in the worldwide debate on climate mitigation and adaptation, we try to help. But yes, it's really 1 minute before 12, and as we all know, you cannot be too late.
Thank you, Prime Minister. If the Netherlands worried, I think in Malaysia we have more reasons to be worried, because we are going to have more rainfall coming our way in the next few years. I wonder, Minister Nasmi, from your vantage point, do you see opportunities coming from this crisis? Because in Eastern philosophy, there's always opportunity coming from crisis.
Well, first, just to reiterate what the Prime Minister said just now, I mean, you can see with our own eyes what's happening, and I've learned a lot in my past 10-11 months as Minister. I've been to a beach in Kelantan where there are plots of land that were already sold to people, but it's now under water, right? We see what you call that. We also know that when we did a report about what if the water level rises beyond 2 degrees Celsius, places like similar to your airport, we have Klang, where it's basically next to the sea. We have one of the biggest ports in the region. We also have power plants there. So the impact will be enormous, right? So, and I think for us, how do we go about it? And we really need to look at it. Obviously, I mean, traditionally, there's the hard structures, as mentioned, but the alternative that we really need to explore more is on the nature-based solutions. We know that how the world works without development is like a sponge, and it can absorb rain and without releasing water too fast into the rivers. But all of that is disappearing because it's being developed into concrete jungles. So that is something that we really have to bear in mind, the way we plan our cities, our towns, as we go forward. And I think, as rightly said, that we have no choice but to act. We know that, I mean, we would like to think that Malaysia, we want to develop as well. We are still behind Europe in terms of the economy. We have an aspiring middle class. But at the same time, we know that business as usual will not get us anywhere, because then it will be bad for everyone. So we have to develop in a sustainable way. And that is where forums like COP is important.
Thank you, Minister. It is very encouraging to hear that the government is really thinking about more deeper adaptation measures moving forward. Honourable Prime Minister, of course, Netherlands being sort of one of the best practice countries when it comes to adapting to climate change, you have had many policy measures in the past, including the National Adaptation Strategy, and you have the Delta program, which has been going on for decades. But we've always wondered, how do you manage to get all the different parties to work together?
Yes, partly it is in our culture, because the Netherlands is a country of only minorities, and you must rethink what happened. So when you have, for example, the province of North and South Holland, which are very much water-dominated, when from the center in The Hague, the taxation was being put on the farmers and others in the rest of the country, they had to travel there for days. And these farmers had to work together to build dikes, to keep their feet dry, to create these polders. And the only way you can do that is by, one, fighting the center, which is very healthy, so you have a lively democracy, but also by working together. And in the water boards, and these are regional structures basically following the main rivers and the nature-based water systems, these water boards have always brought together farmers and industry, citizens, to work together on making sure that in that particular stream area of a river or whatever, or lake system, that things are being planned and done. So the Netherlands is slow, but we are slow because we want to discuss everything with each other, then come to a sort of general agreement, and then we are faster implementing. And two, I think what has been successful is this whole Delta program, because it was designed after this flood which killed almost, I think, 1,300 people in the 1950s in Zeeland, the province of Zeeland. But then we created this program which is long-term, and also for this century we committed large amounts of money up till 2050 and beyond to make sure that we update the existing systems where necessary. For example, the dike which is creating the closure of the IJsselmeer, the former South Sea, which is connecting now North Holland and Friesland. This has to be updated on many aspects. You have to make money available for the long term, and that money is made available for long term. So you have the money committed and the plans for the long term, and the sort of, let's say, in our culture ingrained tendency to come to agreement after discussing for a long time. That's why I think this is successful, and it will remain successful. I'm not saying that everything is going well in my country. We have elections coming up, and the voters might agree with me that not everything is perfect. A lot is perfect, but not everything. But on this, the long-term planning and committing money and making this change from the concrete, very traditional barriers to building with nature and creating new ecosystems on the way is really having large-scale support, and people really understand that this is necessary. By the way, we also are still connected because of history with 6 Caribbean islands, like Curaçao and Aruba and Sint Maarten, and 3 smaller ones. And they are all, because of the hurricanes, but also because of rising sea levels, they are experiencing climate change. And we are also working very closely with the small island development states and this whole SIDS system worldwide, and also within the UN, and including the next upcoming SIDS conference in 2024, I think it is, in Antigua and Bermuda, I think it will take place. And we are very much involved in that, and we hosted a lunch in New York during the UN General Assembly with a couple of small island development states countries and our own kingdom partners in the Caribbean on this particular issue of rising sea levels and how is it impacting small island states like Indonesia. Indonesia has 17,000 islands, as you know, and there is a huge risk now to many of these Indonesian islands because of the rising sea levels, and also Micronesia and many other countries in this region and in the Pacific.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you also for sharing with us the situation in the Dutch Caribbean. I think most of us in Malaysia are not such familiar. There is that part of the Kingdom of Netherlands as well. So coming back to Minister Dick Nazmi, we have had this very severe episodes of floods recently, and I wonder what kind of lessons we've learned from that, and what kind of policy innovation or institutional innovation that we will put in place moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, there are 2 levels, I would say. The big one is obviously, yes, spending on infrastructure. And again, a lot of people will complain, it's expensive, it's a lot of money. Although I would say that I don't think anyone, any party will reject this in Parliament when you talk about spending on floods. But actually, if you calculate the losses that we suffer from huge floods, then the amount is much bigger than that. So there are 2 things. One is obviously infrastructure, but we are also, I think, a lot of developed countries, they have flood hazard maps or flood risk maps. So we are also, the government has agreed to do that, where that will allow homeowners to get the right level of insurance for their homes. It's not popular with developers because it affects the projects that they want to do. But I think the government can't just keep on giving money, right, to deal with this. So that's what we are doing, and that's a big thing. But unfortunately, there's also something more basic, and this is perhaps something more Malaysian. It's also about waste management. It's about throwing, littering, plastic. When I go down, it is in our system. It's something that we can, if everyone just, do their part, then we do not have to deal with that. And we can deal with the bigger challenges, right? But unfortunately, this does contribute. I went to Bukit Raja in Klang. We see that in some places in the industrial area, how we manage rubbish, we need to improve. And I think that's something that don't just look at the quote-unquote mega projects, but also look at the very operational, habitual things that we have to handle. And I think this is something that we have to work on from the authorities, but we need to work with society.
Which is a whole society
approach.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's a great point that Prime Minister, you mentioned whole society. I think in the Netherlands you managed somehow to get that going, and in fact sharing the risks between among the different stakeholders, particularly perhaps the insurance industry. I wonder if you can comment a bit on that, getting the other private sector.
But it's not easy because the country is now, since this big flood and the many people who died in 1953, since then it is relatively safe. We had a big flooding in the province of Limburg in 2021. Luckily no people died, but in Germany and Belgium we had many people who died during that huge floods taking place in those countries, but also in my country. But again, not people dying, but still damage is enormous and people are really hit. So that reminds you of the importance. But generally, we also constantly have to make sure that people understand why it is necessary to stay safe, and that it costs money, and that it is not normal if you have a country which is below sea level for such a big part, and the main commercial center being in that part of the country, and that it means that we have to constantly invest. Again, that's why we do it long term. But to make it of a whole society approach, it also involves exactly what the minister is saying. How can you reduce plastics? How can you increase the effectiveness of waste management? And we have experimented with many things, and we think we have learned one or two things. But also this is a whole society approach for everybody to understand that waste management is directly and indirectly also impacting your effectiveness in protecting the country and fighting climate change.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Coming back to Minister Nick Nazmi, we have been following your announcements on almost weekly or fortnightly basis on mitigation actions that the country is promoting or pursuing. Do you see similar opportunities in the adaptation side of the equation? Can we bring in the private sector more aggressively?
Yes, in fact, we are already working on our national adaptation plan, and there's a project that's funded by the GCF, the Green Climate Fund. So we know that mitigation alone, especially as I think in this we are quite similar between the Netherlands and Malaysia, we are relatively small contributors to the carbon emissions. Not to say that we shouldn't do anything, but if it's just Malaysia and Netherlands reducing and mitigating, and the rest of the world are not doing anything, then it's not going to save the world.
Very popular with the voters.
But I think that the key thing for us is adaptation, and that is where there's not enough attention. But like I said, our adaptation plan is being prepared. We plan, obviously, once it's ready, we will go out to the public with it. On the other hand, we also have our climate change legislation, which we are preparing as well. We hope by 2025 we can bring it to Parliament, because we want to have a thorough legislation, and we look at the experience of other countries of how the objectives of the Paris Agreement can be built in legislation. So I think we are looking at we have to look at from various approaches, because climate change is the existential crisis of our times. So I think if we just sit down and do nothing or pursue business as usual, then we're not going to go anywhere.
We are recipe for disaster Yang Hormat Minister. Maybe we can come to the final segment of our dialogue today, which is the partnership between the Netherlands and Malaysia. Yeah, and we all have been very encouraged to hear that this is, I mean, it's been going on for quite some years now. Just if you could comment on that, I mean, what kind of existing sort of initiatives that we have under this umbrella, Prime Minister?
Well, I think one of the things where we can help each other with is to implement the commitments from the Water Conference. I think you made 29 commitments, if I'm well informed, Malaysia, at the UN Water Conference. I'm not exactly sure how many we made, but I know more about Malaysia now than about the Netherlands, but we also made a long list. One of the things I hope we could do, based on this dialogue, is to challenge each other in the best way to implement them. I would love for Dutch experts to present to the Malaysian colleagues what we are doing, and then for Malaysian colleagues to do the same with their Dutch colleagues, because that's the best way to learn from each other, and particularly when you have consultants and the academia sitting together, you will immediately have a debate, and it will be very polite, but also very much content driven. So that's one of the things I hope we can do, building on what is already there. Of course, we had today with the Prime Minister, we had fantastic talks on this, and we decided to make an MOU on our water corporation, to give it more of a sort of structural underpinning, and the Prime Minister even asked for this MOU to be finished by the COP28 in Dubai, so everybody's now a bit anxious, can we do this so quickly? But I very much like that my colleague here is very much action oriented. I love that, so we'll try to do together to make that MOU, get it on paper, and that is basically underpinning what is already happening. But it's crucial because it gives you a structure to the system. And then of course we, with the disaster relief team and all the studies we have presented from what we think you could do in Malaysia, and learning from what you are doing in our country, implementing it in the Netherlands, that's a third leg. But I'm not the expert here, so I know that there are many smaller projects where we work on collectively, and I do not know all the details, but the fact that they take place is crucial, because that keeps this ball rolling. And yeah, and let's also together explain to our people why this is necessary and why the long-term investments need to be made, and that it is not normal that things are safe. And you've seen in 2021, and we in the summer of 2021 in the province of Limburg, what can go wrong if you're not prepared.
Thank you, Prime Minister. If we can get Minister Nasby to also comment on the content of this partnership. I mean, what do we see moving forward?
I think what we really appreciate is the fact that we can put ourselves, to benchmark ourselves with a country that, you know, has the best practice with regards to water disaster management. So I think that is very useful, and I think what we think is useful for the Netherlands as well is to look at a country in a different climate, different environment. How do we operate and deal with our issues? And I think, you know, obviously our Department of Irrigation and Drainage, JPS, they are already working on identifying pilot projects of based on the DRRT, you know, so the Dutch Risk Reduction Team. And so the idea is that we can see where we can look and implement and maybe then compare with what we have been doing based on conventional or traditional, I'm not sure that's British, but engineering. Right?
I hope not.
Yeah, so we're trying to look at that, and I think that's very crucial for us. And you know, we have an MOU between our Hydrological Institute Nahrim and KWR for research collaboration. For example, because Nahrim, they've developed technologies to to create drinkable water from rain. So these are things that I think we can collaborate and we can learn from one another. And I hope that this cooperation, this friendship can go on, you know, in the future. And that is why when both the ambassador of the Netherlands and Tajikistan came to invite me to go to the UN for the water conference, I immediately said yes, because I think that based on the assistance and that has been given by the Netherlands to Malaysia. I think we want to support all these efforts, and we want to put water as an important and integral part of the climate discussion.
Thank you, Minister.
The climate discussion is also a water discussion to a large extent. Absolutely, I totally agree.
Well, before we let you go, Minister, so Prime Minister, I mean, you are known internationally as one of the great proponents of water diplomacy, and I think it will be one of your legacies as Prime Minister and also as a global leader. I mean, what is your hope moving forward? I mean, how can Malaysia be brought in?
I think Malaysia is already brought in because we are absolutely partners in this, and I think really at a leveling in a sense that is not us preaching to you or you preaching to us, but really trying to challenge each other in the best way possible, and particularly between academics. That's always fantastic to see, because they immediately start to quarrel and then try to come to the best outcome. So I think that is crucial. And what I hope, obviously, we have been successful in getting climate adaptation next to climate mitigation in the whole COP process, in the whole discussion about the $100 billion pledge, in the whole discussion about loss and damage. That is crucial because we cannot in the short term only solve all of this by mitigation. Yes, it has to be done, and also because you want to live in a clean, safe country. But you're right, in Malaysia and Netherlands would only work on this, and if in China there is still an opening of coal-fired power plants every 4 days, then we still have an issue. Luckily in China they are also now making that change and understanding that this is not working. And the society is turning against this, because you have about tens of thousands of demonstrations in China, particularly originating from climate issues in every part of that big country. So we have to do it all together, and I really believe that we can lead the way, and we are doing that at the moment.
Thank you, Prime Minister. With deep gratitude to your thoughts and views and vision. Also, Minister Nik Nazmi, for sharing your thoughts on what's happening in Malaysia and moving forward. Please join me in thanking our two luminaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mark Nichol, and Muhammad Nazmi Ahmad, and Dr. Hazrat Adnan for the fruitful discussion. I hope we all have gained valuable insight from this session. Before we proceed for the next agenda, please join me to round applause to moderator Dr. Hazrat Adnan for the excellent dialogue session. Right, now may I invite the Honorable Mark Root and Muhammad Azmat for the photography session, sir. Last one. Sir, how about one with the very firm handshake? Yes. Finally, we have reached the end of the water dialogue. On behalf of the Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, we extend our sincere gratitude to the Honorable Mark Rutte for gracing us with his presence today. We will let the Honorable Mark Rutte, accompanied by Yang Muhammad Nazmi and the entourage of Netherlands, to leave the auditorium first. Thank you to all distinguished guests for joining us at this event, and have a pleasant day.